Hello, and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. Malawi is a landlocked country in Central Africa with a population of about 15 million, of which 80% are Christian. Malawi is one of the world's least developed nations. In 2010, Pope Benedict XVI erected a new diocese in the northern part of Malawi called Karonga Diocese. Today, it is my great privilege to welcome His Excellency Bishop Martin Mtumbuka, the Bishop of the Karonga Diocese, as well as the Vice President of the Malawi Bishops Conference. Welcome, Your Excellency, and thank you for being with us here today in our program.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, then Pope Benedict in 2010 opened a new diocese, the Karonga Diocese in northern Malawi. Why did he open the diocese? Why is the faith growing so rapidly in your area?
Thank you very much, Mark. The desire for having a diocese of Karonga was there for a long time. In 2010, this had been discussed for over 27 years. Because the Diocese of Mzuzu then covered close to 1/3 of the country and was huge. There was no way really a bishop could pastor or minister to the people in that diocese so big.
Right.
It was not possible.
Right.
Because it was actually more than 1/3, the territory that was covered by the Diocese of Karonga. And as I've said, the discussion had gone on already by over 27 years.
So the idea, let's cut it down in size and make it more manageable.
More manageable. So what they did, they cut off about 1/3 from Zuzu Diocese to create Karonga Diocese. But meanwhile, really, the number of people, the Christians, has always been growing. And the faithful welcomed this very wholeheartedly, really. And we started this diocese in 2010 with 57,000 Catholics. Now we're 8 years old. It's 73,000.
Why is it growing so quickly? I mean, what is it that the faith is like a burning fire? It's amazing.
Yes, I would say in general terms, I think the Africans, and particularly certain Malawians and all in that part of Africa, people are generally very religious. But it doesn't mean there's no work. People certainly want to connect with God. I would think one of the reasons is that the situation they live in is very crushing. The economy is very poor. There are no hospitals that are functioning properly in most of them. Most of them are too far from the hospitals. There are no public transport system for most of them. Most of them, the food is hardly there for some of the months, January to March. So life is very harsh, very harsh indeed. And I think it forces people under those circumstances to connect to a spiritual source of energy and inspiration. And people really, when you've run out of resources, you have to look for the resources outside yourself. So this is quite general. But it doesn't mean that there's not much work, but people are generally very open to God, and we have to work with them, and we have to walk with them. But basically they want some source of encouragement, some source of support in the very difficult life that they're walking.
I want to come back to the economic questions because that's an enormous question, also your work in this capacity. But I want to know, first of all, a little bit about the sociological landscape of the people. Who are we talking about when we're talking about Malawians? There are many different ethnic groups.
Yes, yeah. I think we're talking about a couple of ethnic groups, but in terms of language, there are two. The Chewa, but that doesn't mean that the whole country is Chewa, but their language is widely used in the country. So they would be predominantly in the central region. But in the southern region, you would have the Lomwes. They're also predominant, but there are other ethnic groups. And then the southeast, you would have the Yawos. They're also quite a big group. And then in the north, you would have the Mtumbukas. But in the Diocese of Karonga, you would also have the Nkondis. But they're all Bantus. So the language Mtumbuka, Chewa, they share a lot of common words because we are all Bantus. So, but Malawi is a very rural country. There are two, the Blantyre, the Lilongwe, and Mzuzu, the three cities, but Blantyre and Lilongwe maybe, but nothing really to compare with here, and nothing to compare with Nairobi or Johannesburg or no, not even
Right,
Harare.
we're talking about small cities.
Small, yeah. So Malawi, we're talking of very rural people, by all means. We're talking of very rural people.
Are they more herders, or are they farmers? Are they agriculturalists?
Most of them are peasant farmers, so they do subsistence farming, where they're not farming with machines, they're farming with a hoe and an axe and things like that.
I'd like to come back again just a little bit to the faith and the foundation of the faith. Now, Malawi is 80% Christian, 12% Islam.
Yeah.
But of course, the origins came from tribal religions, from
Yes.
the tribal practices. When did Christianity come into your family? How did, first of all, I guess, what were the tribal practices that you were practicing in your family? And when did Christianity come in, and how did it come into your family?
I would say in my particular family, it would be much, much later, probably the late 30s, but Presbyterian. Catholics, Catholicism much, much later,
So
in the 70s.
First, the Presbyterians came in first.
Yes, the Presbyterians in Malawi, they went there many, many years before.
And they did a good job.
They did a good job. They introduced formal education, and then the Catholic missionaries came 60 years after, but they landed in the center and the south and then moved forward. But the Presbyterians had their headquarters in the north. So the north was evangelized first by the Presbyterians. They also brought education there. So my grandmother worked at this famous mission, Livingstonia. My grandfather worked there. In fact, that's where they met. And then my late father, my late uncle, they all worked there. So
they were all Presbyterians.
Yes, yes. So it was much later, but for myself and my young brother became Catholic because we went to Catholic school. So that was the reason.
And that was for you, that was the change?
Yes.
You became Catholic. How was that viewed in your family from a family of Presbyterians?
Initially with some problems. Didn't understand. But we were brought up in a family where my grandfather, for example, my grandmother, who had worked with Dr. Laws at the beginning of this thing, said, really pushed us, even as small boys, to pray. And I still remember we're heading cattle. He would say, you take turns, you bring your cattle as close as possible to a church, and one should go in halfway when they started praying, and halfway get out, and the other one looks after the cattle, the other one comes in for the last half.
So there's a real sense of faith.
Oh, yes, very much so, very, very much so. And then my mother, who's still alive, thank God, also brought us very much in that faith. And then my uncles also very much. So the faith was very much
just
in the
part
family.
of your day-to-day.
Yeah, very much so.
And how about your own vocation? When did you say, I want to be a priest?
I would say it very much when I was at the school, because when I met, I had a friend who is now retired, but he was Vicar General for Mzuzu Diocese. We were in the same school, and then I came into contact with missionaries. The first one was the White Father from France, and then the other one was St. Patrick's or Ketegan from Ireland. And they talked to us from time to time. And then there was a diocesan priest who was working in our parish, and he kind of said, well, don't you think about this, don't you think about this, so that you can share the faith with others. And it is a very gradual process usually. Usually you really don't know how far you'll go. And then from a Catholic primary school, I went to a junior seminary, and there I met priests who were very, very outstanding. The rector, Marcel Giroir, and the others, Michel Cote, is still alive today. These were left a deep impression on us as young people in a junior seminary. So the vocation to priesthood really is a very slow thing. And you come into it and it grows in you very, very slowly, but with very small things. But in the end, I think then 81, I decided that I would go on to start philosophy at a major seminary.
Is it difficult for you to be a bishop within your own context, if you will? How is it? How are you received as a bishop by the people? And yeah, I suppose the question is it possible to be a prophet in your own country?
I think probably the advantage of being a bishop in your own area is that you understand the mentality of the people, and I think also the deficiencies of the people, of the culture, much better. I think that you can also speak more broadly on issues that maybe if I was from outside, I would think that they may think I'm looking down on them. But being one of the local people, and if I'm critical of certain tendencies and certain practices, they know that I'm not doing this because I look down on this ethnic group, because I'm one of them. So I would think that that's the advantage. Of course, there are disadvantages. The disadvantage might be that the expectations in a country that is so poor might be not all the ones that are concern my role as a bishop, but maybe people will be more preoccupied with the school fees of their children, and I think that I would be solving those problems. But otherwise, it gives you a lot of advantage when you are ministering among your own people, because the mentality, the thinking, and also the deficiencies within your social system, you understand it.
I want to come back a little bit to what we spoke about earlier, which was the economic situation.
Yeah.
As if I understand correctly, 53% of the population live below the poverty line, which is enormous. I think we've spoken earlier that Malawi is one of the least developed countries in the world.
Yeah.
What do we understand by poverty? How can you give us a picture of what we understand? What does poverty mean?
Mark, I think that Malawi, the poverty in Malawi is real and very dehumanizing in many, many ways, really. To such an extent that it cannot be, addressing poverty in Malawi cannot be separated from the traditional pastoral issues. People are so poor, in most cases, some months they will not have food, the children can hardly go to school in some cases, and the housing and medical care, the death of pregnant mothers who are trying to deliver. I've had cases with some of my parish priests who live in rural outstations, rural parishes, the pregnant mother asking the parish priest to take her at the back of the pickup to a hospital, and they're delivering at the back of the pickup, and things that here would be inconceivable. And so the level of poverty that we're talking about in Malawi is very dehumanizing. And we have to respond to this really by a way that is rather strange, that we have to prioritize the development as much as we have to work on the other, because people, if the basic needs are not met below a certain point, you can't have same people going to pray, because all the time they will be nursing sick children because they have not eaten well, and they cannot read because they have never been to school. So not that we're saying enhancing their relationship with God is the same as knowing how to read and write, but we cannot progress with the typical traditional pastoral role without
concern for this.
Particularly education. Without that, we cannot. And we have situations where, because of poverty, families asking their children, their girls, daughters who are 9 years old, 10 years old, to get married so that they can get the cattle and sell it and have some money. In the face of these issues, we cannot keep quiet. We have to work. So when I come here as a bishop, that's why I spend as much time meeting agencies like Church in Need, but as the same also Miserio and the others, because we cannot run the church in Africa, in Malawi,
without
the two arms have to be held up to develop together.
Yes. Over 90% of Malawi's exports are agricultural products. Are you feeling climate change? Is this something that you are
very much so?
Feeling the
very,
impact?
very much so.
And is this having consequently social impact on the people? And how is this relationship working?
More and more, Malawi is having either of the two, either floods or drought. while in the past there were some areas that were prone to floods a little bit, but the rainfall pattern was more or less predictable. I know when I was growing up, my dad always said we must plant around 15 November, because 15 November the rain starts when we grew up. It's no longer the case. So the weather pattern has become far less predictable. So in some cases, people will plant something, but maybe the rains, when they come end of December or mid-January, all that gets washed away.
Seeds are,
all it germinates, starts to grow, the rain disappears for 7-8 weeks. This has now become a routine problem in Malawi. So the climate change issue, the changing, because the people are subsistent. You know, they work just with their hand. It's hand to mouth. And when the food is washed away by the floods or it's all dried up by the sun, it's a serious implication. So in some cases, we have the whole county or district, people with no food. And especially between January and March, because that is the time when it is the rainy time, the food that they grew last year is now finished. We have to look for food from different aid agencies. So the poverty line, the climate change is real, even for Malawi, really very, very real.
What impact does this have on the social networks between people? Do you find, I don't know, a greater movement of populations?
Yes, there are two major ones. One, the young people who have been to secondary school gravitating towards the towns because they think that the towns will solve their problem. They don't. So they end up there, most of them on crime. In the rural areas, then people fighting over pieces of land that are more fertile, or accusing one another of things like witchcraft because they're dying because they don't have enough food. So it brings a lot of instability in local communities. And of course, for the church, the impact is huge because it means also they can't support the church. They can't give to the church if they themselves are not eating. So these issues surrounding the climate change and the unpredictable weather pattern, coupled with a government system that has no social welfare.
There's no social
No, in Malawi, no. There's no social welfare. So, and the government hospitals have no medicine. And if you have to get medicine, you may have to buy. But if your maize crop failed, you have nothing to sell so that you can buy the medicine.
How do you live this? I mean, I know in some ways you grew up in this environment, but at the same time, you come to the West, you see the abundance that we have here. You must somehow, at some point, experience a certain frustration.
I think that at the end of it all, you really have. It is upsetting, to be honest with you. It's very upsetting, but the best we can do. I've never personally felt that of running away. I studied in Ireland for a couple of years. I studied in London for a couple of years, went back. But I think what is most frustrating is that our public system, the government system, is not coming up with solutions that can save the people from this very dehumanizing situation. I think that is the annoying part of it, really, very, very annoying. But we, as a church, and one thing that we can't do is giving up hope. Because if we, as a church, give up hope, I think all these faithful, they will have nowhere else to turn to. So we have to work on this and still hoping that eventually the situation will improve.
You mentioned you have 15 priests. For, I think your Catholic population is about 65,000.
73 now.
73,000.
Yeah.
Which means about 5,000 persons per priest.
Yeah.
How often do these people get to see a priest?
No, I think seeing a priest is still a big challenge. We have 73,000 Catholics who pray in 254 prayer centers. So like the parish center would be one, then there would be another place, and dotted across the diocese, 254 of them, which means the occasions at which they can meet a priest are very few.
Like once every 3 months, something like this.
That's what it means. So the bulk of the work has to be done by catechists and many other lay people.
But it must be an enormous celebration when the bishop comes or the priest comes. It's like a festivity.
Very, very much so. Very much. I mean, people. That's why I was saying that people walk for hours and hours to go to that mass, really, because they really want either to make a confession or to have their child baptized, or to just to celebrate mass. So they really take it very, very seriously.
You are the Vice President of the Bishops Conference, and one of your primary responsibilities is vocational development. How do you see this work, and what is the challenge that you face in trying to encourage vocations among the young people?
I think for us, our situation is that in terms of vocations, we're not too bad. We have a good number of seminarians. My own diocese has 24, and we have over 120 in our philosophy. We have about 80 in our theology. But the most immediate problem that we're facing, and that's why I came here today, also one of the reasons, is the training of formators. We have not dealt with this problem for a while, to have formators who have been well trained. Formation today is getting more complicated even for our sake, because the stability in families is not as it was. So children go to the seminary with a lot of internal problems, personal problems, and we need formators who can help these young people handle all this or come out of this. So I think having enough formators is one of the big challenges I face as a bishop chairman for seminaries. And one of the reasons why I came here is these scholarships. And we're very grateful. And Church in Need has helped us with a number of scholarships to Rome, and this year some to Poland, also to Jordan University in Tanzania, which is very good, so that we can have a big pool of formators who have been properly trained. So regarding vocation, but otherwise the young people.
Are there young people interested in giving their lives?
Yeah, they
there
are.
is a hunger for giving their lives.
So far we're doing well. Of course we have to work on it. It presupposes having junior seminaries. We still have junior seminaries. We need also to have functioning chaplaincies to the secondary schools, so not all the boys go to junior seminaries. Some just go to government secondary schools or private secondary schools. We need the priests to meet them. So we are trying to promote vocations through the youth ministry, and also the vocation directors visiting the schools, also parish priests talking about this. But so far, I think God is helping us. We have the young men, a good number of them.
How can we help?
I would say that for us, the most acute area in terms of formation of seminarians would be the formators. But in general terms, is to have a solid catechesis. This is, to us, a big thing, because even Malawi, poor as it is not working in isolation. There are big organizations that go to Malawi, bombard the local people with very secularist agendas, with ideas that greatly militate against the faith. And the young people are bombarded with a big appetite for material things, and also moral values that are contrary to the gospel. We need to respond to this, and the best response we can give is solid catechesis, and also the families. Unless we have solid families, we cannot have good seminarians or good young people. But the general catechesis, either through the radio or through the catechists themselves, or any form that imparts on the faith, this is the most important, because we believe young people and others, once they are strengthened, even if they pass through storms, they will go through. But if we baptize young people and old who are not strong in their own faith, they will all be swept away. And we cannot prevent the people coming in with different ideas. We live in a world as it is today. So the real appeal that we can make, the greatest appeal for us, is any help really that could help us to provide more sound and effective catechesis, either through the radio, just face-to-face, through printed material in this area, because people who have strong faith, but also who know the faith, not just believe, but they must also know the articles of our faith, understand them properly, as we got it from the apostles. This is very, very important. We really feel we have no time to begin experimenting with doctrine, and people are putting their whole life into this. I mean, when people walk for 1.5 days to go to Mass, it's a serious matter. Even myself, when I drive, I sometimes brought there by car, and I meet these Christians who started walking yesterday. They come to Mass. They're not coming for a joke, because they take it serious. We can only respond to this by really giving them the faith, that they understand the faith, that they can articulate it more clearly. I think this would be the biggest gift that you can give us.
So, Your Excellency, notwithstanding all the storms, you've not lost hope. You're full of fire for this country and for the people.
Yes, Mark. I think we are only servants, really. We come on the stage, we perform, and we disappear. And when we look back, like Malawi, the White Fathers, the Montfortians, work under much harsher conditions than ourselves. But I think I should not dwell on that. I should dwell on the founder of our faith. He was crucified. He died for this. I shared this one time during the ad limina visit with the Holy Father in Rome, because when he started, we had the ad limina visit in 2014. There were a few things, storms. I said, Holy Father, the apostolic faith, your predecessor was killed for it, He just laughed at that. But I really just wanted to make it clear that we who have accepted before the faithful and before God that we will share the faith, we should do everything possible to do our part. We are not doing anything greater than our Master went through, really. We are not. But many thanks, Church Need. You're helping us quite a lot. We are very grateful. We appreciate it.
Your Excellency, it's a privilege for us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having been with us today on our program.
And thanks.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the work of Bishop Martin in the north of Malawi, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.